o'clock, so let's start. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome everybody to the January 7th, 2020 City Council meeting. So I have a roll call, please.
Mayor Baker.
Here.
Member Volter. Member Neary.
Here.
Member Basler.
Here.
Member Cornett. Here. Member Burns.
Here.
Member Lynn.
Here.
City Administrator Giffen.
Here.
City Attorney Etch.
Here. Thank you very much. Don't forget all, please rise for the moment of silence and the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We would now like to open up the podium for anyone from the audience that would like to address City Council. So if yes, sir.
Do I stand here or?
Yes, sir. State your name and your address, please, sir.
My name is Matt Lenz. I live at 1000, I just moved here, 1009 Lincoln Road in Dayton, Kentucky. I recently moved from Rose Drive. So I'm a lifelong Dayton resident, and I'd like to address council about an issue on Dayton Pike. I own a house at 303 Dayton Pike. I passed out some paperwork for everyone to review. There's a serious stormwater problem on Dayton Pike. My residence is at 303 Dayton Pike. This house and two of my neighbors' houses, the Red Leafs and Steve Trussell's house, continue to be flooded by stormwater. Whenever there's a heavy rain, the whole area turns into a lake. I spoke to SD1 this spring, and they were already aware of the stormwater pipe that had collapsed near the front of my yard. If you look on page 1, you can see the red outlined area. This is where I think the Sanitation District 1 ran a camera through. I don't know when the footage was, but that pipe has been identified a long time ago. And I've only had the house at 303 Dayton Pike since March, but my neighbors have suffered a lot of flood damage for several years. The city manager and SD1 has classified the stormwater pipe as a private pipe. This pipe is 24 inches round and is 14 feet deep. This is not a private pipe. Most private pipes are 4 inches round. You know, it comes off of the downspout, 24 inches, you know how big 24 inches is, it's a big pipe. If this is a private pipe, then why is all the private pipe taking public water from the street? If you look on page 2 of the paperwork they gave you, it's the bottom of Dayton Pike and the road going up Chateau Ridge. I circled there's some storm drains here. It takes storm water. And that's next to my neighbor, Mr. Crittenden. My attorney has been in contact with SD1, and they have agreed to pay for half of the repair. Everyone pays for stormwater removal on our sanitation bill. Me and my neighbors are being flooded by stormwater. I would like to approach City Council about the city paying for the other half of the repair. Sanitation District 1 has agreed to pay for half of it. If you're classifying this pipe as a private pipe, I have the option of filling it with concrete, which I will do. This will create a big problem. So, you know, as you're aware of that big intersection of Dayton Pike that goes up Chateau Ridge, there's 3 storm drains there. And that water's just going to continue to back up there. And it's going to turn into a lake. Regarding the sidewalk project, and I know that, you know, Michael Giffen said that, it's got nothing related to the sidewalk project, but it does. Why would you put a sidewalk through there and then tear it up when you repair a stormwater pipe? It's getting ahead of the game there. You gotta repair the stormwater pipe before you put a sidewalk in there. If you're not going to maintain a stormwater pipe that carries public water from the road, I do not have faith in the city to put a sidewalk on my property. I refuse to sign off on this, which would waste taxpayer money. Thank you for your time, and my neighbor Jeff would also like to speak about this issue. He's lived there a lot longer than I've owned a house, and he's had a lot more problems occurred because of it.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Wentz.
I'm Carl Redleaf. I live on 196 State Pike, and he's right about the water. We have a serious water problem up there. And I've dug and put a couple catch basins in my yard myself to try to get rid of some of the water, but it's still not taking it fast enough, the way it's coming off that hill. And as far as the sidewalk, I mean, if you put the sidewalk in and that rain keeps washing it out, who's responsible for putting that sidewalk back? Me? That I don't even want to begin with? Am I going to be responsible for 170 plus feet in front of my house for a new sidewalk when it all washes out? I don't want to be responsible for that. So I'm with him. I don't think you need to fix the water problem before you worry about the sidewalk. Thank you.
I have a question. This line that runs down, which everybody comes from, like, I think it goes up past Chateau Ridge and runs down, and I guess that runs on down into right there by Belmont, and then runs into that new line that we put in to fill in that ditch.
On the Parkland 8 Pike?
Yes. And I guess my main question is why wouldn't that be a city line or a sanitation line? Sanitation took over everything, didn't they?
So the sanitation district took over anything that was a public utility line. So the way that you have to kind of think of this is, before those homes were built, there was a creek there where the culvert is. So whoever developed those lots privately, in order to do that, they are the ones that culvert the creek bed. So when a private individual is building lots and culverts a creek area, that doesn't become part of the public system. It's part of the private system.
So Michael, you're saying the people that build a house where Mr. Redleaf, Mr. and Mrs. Redleaf lives, and Mr. Lenz lives, those houses are in charge of that. I'm here to tell you that I've lived in the city of Dayton almost 70 years now, and them houses have always been there. I don't know how you could say this is a private line when the water's coming off our hill, going in, that we've got sanitation lines, we've got catch basins there, dumping into their private, supposedly private line. That just doesn't make sense to me.
So the way you could also look at it is, let's say that line wasn't there, it was a creek. Okay, if that creek overflows, that's not a city-maintained creek, it's part of the private property. Now, there's a line that runs under Chateau Drive, that's a public line, goes under the public street and the catch basins that are there catching the public stormwater. But when it runs through the private property there, it's not a public line. If there wasn't a line there and there was a creek there, the city wouldn't be responsible for the creek. So when they culvert that creek bed, it doesn't become part of the public system. It still stays part of.
When did they put this line in?
I imagine.
And who put it in?
When these homes were built.
Michael, I've lived here for over 70 years now, and I'm telling you, that line's been there ever since that I've lived in the city. Correct, I'm not here 70, I'm going on 70, so.
It's always been
There's houses that have been there for 70 years that I know of.
Bill, I don't know what you want to do.
Once again, I've made this statement in the past, and I'll say it again. There's a man sitting back there, every month he gives me a report that says, the citizens have to do this, and the citizens have to do that. Now, it's something that's, it's our problem, just like the problem is down on 4th Street. It's our problem, and we don't want to take care of it. We want to make the citizens that take care of it. That's ridiculous and ludicrous.
Well, yeah, like he said, if he wanted to, he could just go ahead and fill it with concrete, and then what are we gonna do?
There's nothing we can do about it. Now, if he creates a problem that damages his
Well,
neighbor's
you're right.
properties, they can sue him, I'm sure.
But, well, I mean, our catch basin's drained into that thing. I still can't believe that that is not sanitation line.
I don't either.
Because of all the lines in this town, I thought were, sanitation took over, they're always out repairing. Yes, it's a stormwater line, but is this one that got missed in the shuffle?
No, this never belonged to the city at all. What happens when you develop an area of land, and you build houses upon it, and you put these lines in, normally, well, what you do nowadays, make sure that's all covered, is you get it all approved by SD1, you bring it all up to their specs, and you dedicate it to that public use, so that way then it's taken care of and it's a public line. That didn't occur in this scenario, so that way it maintained that private use, private line status.
Yeah, because you always hear of lines running from your house into it, you're responsible for them,
Yeah.
and never the main.
Yeah, I mean, this is the main line serving that, but because they didn't dedicate it, that we don't have any property rights to that whatsoever. None of that was dedicated to the city whenever it was built, and that's the problem. Whenever SD1 went and looked at the records, for the development and for that area. And I think this thing was, if memory serves, Mr. Ellerman, SD1's council advised, I think it was back in the 50s when this was done, but there was no dedication to it, to the city or anything like that. And it remains its private status. It's almost like building a road. People do it with roads all the time. They'll have property out in the county. They'll build a road through it. Just because they built a road doesn't mean it's a public road.
How can we allow our catch basins go into his private lot, a private line? Or their, I shouldn't say his, it's everybody that lives on that street there.
Is that true, Mark?
Yeah, if you look at the second page,
We got 3 catch basins.
Your house was built.
It was 1958, and I've owned it since March 2019.
Well, we got 3 catch basins there.
I bought mine off Fred Ayers, and he said he's lived in it 50-something years, and I've owned it for 16 years, so it's been in there a while. I don't know when it was built. I don't know how old it is. But he told me when he bought it, there was whoever, I don't know, whoever filled that in, he said there used to be a swinging bridge, you walk from his house to the front door. Over that creek, and whoever, I don't know who put the pipe in or who filled it in, but a long time ago, that's what he said he had to walk across. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, I've never seen none of the old pictures or anything, so.
Has there been an estimate done for the amount that it would cost to,
SD1 is working on that right now, actually. They're trying to figure out what that would come up to.
So you're asking council to approve a dollar amount we don't know yet?
I'm asking council to consider paying for half of what it's going to cost to repair that pipe, which is carrying public water, is all I'm asking, something reasonable. Mr. Giffen basically said all along, it's private pipe, and, I thought about bringing a 24-inch piece of pipe to you to show how big a 24-inch pipe is. It's not a private pipe, it's pretty damn big. So, it's not a private pipe.
we have Angela Cook here from SD1. She can help further explain this from the sanitation district side. And John, I appreciate you coming.
Absolutely. And hopefully I can further explain. So we have many of these legacy type problems throughout our system where,
Excuse me, ma'am, what's your name?
my name's Angela Cook.
And where are
I
you
work
from?
for the sanitation district.
Thank you.
SD1, yes.
Thank you.
So throughout the service area, there are many of these legacy issues where properties were developed prior to any of the subdivision regulations or SD1 being developed at all. As you know, we took over the stormwater systems early this century. So this is just an example of one of those legacy problems where it was developed, the pipes were installed, and they were never dedicated to SD1. They were not dedicated to the cities that they're in. So therefore, they were never maintained by the cities at any point. And when the assets were turned over to SD1, we did not take over maintenance of them because they were not turned over to us, so they remained private. We do have some cost share programs, as were mentioned. There is no agreement to do a 50-50 cost share. That would be something that the city would need to come to SD1 and present to us and apply for, and for consideration. And this would be sort of out of the box of the normal 50-50 project, but I think it is one that could be considered.
So when they find these pipes that weren't dedicated and should have been, why can't they do it at that time and take over it? I mean, it makes common sense to take over a pipe that should be maintained by the.
Well, as you can imagine, we have hundreds and, however many assets throughout the system, and we can't just take on everyone's problems. We have to fix the ones that we currently have. We do have a private stormwater program that has been created to assist, where we will pay a third of the cost for repair, up to $10,000, but it does remain a private asset at that point, and that would also require the city being the applicant in that.
Ma'am, I asked this question of our city administrator, maybe you can answer it. I'm looking at 3 catch basins that go into quote, a private stormwater. How can you allow a city to have catch basins going on the private property?
Well, we don't allow.
No, I'm not saying you, but I'm asking the question.
And, I mean, again, that's another situation that we have throughout our system, where there are pipes that are connected to SD1 pipes that are connected to private pipes that are connected to SD1 pipes. It's throughout our system, which is another reason we've created the stormwater programs to come up with, partnerships towards resolution.
Angela, do you know, because I don't have this, obviously we don't have the system in front of us, do those catch basins lead to this private line or do they lead to a different line?
I cannot speak to
Yeah,
that 100%, so I don't even, I'm sorry.
No, I've looked at it, but I can't recall either.
So there's no easement owned by SD1 anywhere from Chateau Drive down to Belmont?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, there is no easement whatsoever that is associated with this particular line.
I'm talking about any easement for owned by SD1 for either stormwater or
I can't
sewer.
speak in absolute. To the best of my knowledge, there is not. But there's always a possibility. But I do not believe that there are any easements. In the research that I've done, I have not discovered any.
There's a sanitary lateral running down through there, which,
The sanitary line?
yeah,
Yeah.
which would be SD1, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Looks like it crosses right over there. Stormwater 2 times, over it or under it.
And how have we confirmed, or how have you confirmed that this area here has collapsed?
I can speak on that. I talked to Sanitation District because in early spring, they're getting flooded to the point where it's turning into a lake, 3-4 feet of water around the property. And I called up Sanitation District 1, and the lady was very helpful, and she told me, she said, "Where do you live at?" And she pulled up this drawing, so I see your problem. The problem's already been identified.
By whom?
Sanitation District 1, because I
When?
couldn't get a camera through it. I don't know what the date was of the drawing on page 1, but I can tell you when they went to go run a camera through there, that's where it comes to an abrupt stop, and that's where the red line is. That's where the blockage is. So Sanitation District 1 identified the problem. I don't know when they identified it.
And you can confirm that on behalf of SD1?
I can't, I mean, I need to look at those, what he's looking at, but, I mean, there have been instances.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, I'm
No,
just
there
trying to
have
get.
certainly been instances where we've gone out and we have looked at private lines. And I'm not saying that we should, we've done work that we shouldn't have done in the past.
Understood.
Which is why we did what we called a stormwater audit. And I think Dayton was one of the first cities that we sat down with and went through each pipe by pipe and audited, you know, what had been turned over to us and to avoid going out. But we do respond no matter what. When there is a flooding call or anything, our normal practice at this time is we respond. We don't pull up GIS and look at the line and say, is it private or is it SD10? We respond, you know, as a matter of public health. We feel like we have to go out and respond to those. So I can easily confirm this for you within 24 hours. I just can't at this moment confirm that we had identified this problem.
Well, and my other concern is, you know, what caused the collapse? Was it just age? And is this whole 350 feet going to have to be replaced? As much as we want to help property owners and increase property value, that's a risk without knowing what needs to be replaced and how much it would cost. That's way too open-ended to be able to agree to anything. I sympathize. I know I've talked to the Red Leafs and been down there multiple times during the rainstorm. The ownership, it's like Denny said, I thought SD1 took everything under the ground. Our job was to get it into the ground, and from there it was SD1's problem.
Well, I mean, any new development, for example, up on the hill, the condo development, we did take all of that. That is all identified as public ownership.
But at the time of the SD1 agreement, and I don't know what year that was, I think it was the mid-90s.
Well, we took, the stormwater agreements were in the 2000s.
In 2000.
Yeah, so 2009. The problem is when this was developed, this piece of property was developed, it's likely that that is when they began to install these storm lines in order to be able to develop the sites.
Right.
And at that point in time, there was no regulation, there was no stormwater regulation. There was, you know, it was kind of like the Wild Wild West. So nothing was dedicated to the city, nothing was turned over. So therefore, when we took the pipes in 2009 during the transfer agreement period, the city didn't turn them over to us because they never had maintained them or had ownership of them.
Was that a choice by the city, or?
Well, I mean,
You probably didn't have the data.
they probably didn't have the data. I don't think anybody did it intentionally. I just think, you know, there's lots of developments that occurred where pipes went in and people didn't even, you know, municipalities weren't even aware of it.
What would it take for SD1 to take responsibility from Chateau Drive, from those storm drains, all the way down to Belmont, where it opens up at the water company property? Because my point is, if we were to repair this one section, and 5 years later the next neighbor's having the same problem, and the Red Leafs have the same problem down there that needs remediation, what would it take for SD1 to take ownership of this underground pipe?
So ideally, if Dayton came to SD1 and wanted to do a partnership, a 50-50 partnership, where we split the costs on the repair of whatever section of the pipe you want to apply for, the whole length of the pipe would make great sense, a big portion of it, whatever you decided. Once that repair was completed, SD1 would take ownership of it at that time.
If it was up to code with your
Right.
inspections?
Oh, yeah.
Of just
But that
that
would be-
broken section, or
No,
like how, because this goes
Well,
beyond
this
Chateau.
was, like I said, this is kind of out of the norm. We typically don't do these, so.
I'd suggest that.
So it would be one time, and then you take over, and then the city is not responsible?
Well, it would, you guys would need to come to us. I mean, I can't, I'm not the engineer, so I can't say, you know, what
Even if
section
it's
of the
that
pipe makes
section,
makes
One
most
time we
sense.
would have to help pay for it,
If
and
you
then
did a-
sanitation would take over.
Well, there's two different types of cost share programs. There's a public cost share program, which is normally on public pipes. And the city will come to us, the co-permit team will come to us and say we have this problem. And it'll go through our process. We have a stormwater manager, his name is Sean Blake, he's great. I think he's very aware of this whole situation. And once it becomes a project, we take it to our board, they approve it, it's a city project, we are in it for 50% of the cost. Then there's also a private cost share, which again, the city does apply, and they work with the homeowner or the property owner at that point. In that instance, let me back up a minute, on the public cost share program, that asset becomes SD1's at the conclusion of that project. On a private cost share, it remains with the private person. So if you were going to fix just a small piece of the pipe, the private cost share program will probably be what you would be most interested in participating in, sorry. But if you want to look broad and big picture, I think a larger project would be something that the city may want to consider. Because my guess is the pipe that's under the ground is an old metal pipe. And they typically don't have, it's probably reaching its lifespan, so.
The problem that arises, as Mr. Lentz has stated, if this situation is not fixed, and then you're asking them to put a sidewalk in front of their houses, and it continues, that sidewalk will eventually break, and it will be an added cost to the homeowners.
If I, and Tom, please stop any of us if we're overstepping legal bounds here, okay? Because there's a lot of money that could be involved here. I want to be very careful. We're talking about putting a new sidewalk pretty much along Dayton Pike. And right now we have a water problem on the west side of Dayton Pike. You've got the water running down in some, we've built up little curbs out of macadam and everything to try and keep some of it out of their yards. We've got a private storm pipe going halfway between the road and the houses. Could it, and I don't want to delay this sidewalk program any longer, but could we consider, since we're going to be putting a sidewalk in, put a storm drain underneath it? And that would also allow us to put storm drains along the west side of Dayton Pike. Because you've got no storm drains from Chateau all the way down to Belmont on that west side. It's going to be a lot of additional costs, don't get me wrong, and it's going to be a delay to the program, but that could be one solution to it.
Would you, I would think, given the issue we're talking about, that you would only want to do that if that private storm line became a public storm line, because you're tying all those catch basins into that line. I think that's the only line I'm saying.
I think what he's saying is he wants to run an entire new stormwater line.
An SD1 line.
Yeah, right here. next to
Right on the
sidewalk.
side, with the sidewalk, along the sidewalk. That way, no matter what happens with the collapse of that pipe or whatever, you've got essentially
Gotcha.
a fix, is what I think Councilmember Neary is trying to propose here. I mean, I guess I don't know how that would affect the grant with the sidewalk.
Well, I think it would have to be, it'd have to be done at the same time as the grant, but with funds separate from the grant. So we'd have to figure just how much that project would cost, if SD1 would be willing to do it, and just do it simultaneously.
My concern is, Mr. Lenz, this is patchwork. Even if we were to do this in front of your house, next year it's going to be 2 houses down and then the next house down. As you said, end of life with pipes, and we don't have a number on it yet. It's kind of kicking the can down the road. I think we could take proactive action here by at least figuring out how much it would cost to do that at the same time we're doing the sidewalk, because we're going to be doing excavating there anyway. Put some catch basins along the west side of Dayton Avenue to take care of some of that water running down. And with SD1 then from now on would have the responsibility for the underground pipes, just like everywhere else.
Do you have flooding on the roadway there?
Yes.
Not coming across, the stormwater comes across, but it doesn't cause flooding on it.
Well, last year was crazy. It was monsoons last
It
year.
crosses the road, and that's what causes the, I think, the flooding.
I have video of it.
It's one of the issues causing flooding in that area.
Which is one of the key issues that we need in order for it to be, you know, eligible for our 50/50 program, which I feel strongly.
And it was actually one of the reasons I've been pushing for a sidewalk along that road up there to at least have a 3-inch curb rather than a 2-inch macadam. You know, I would rather explore that option. I know it's gonna be a lot of engineering time and estimate time and everything, but we're gonna be digging that area up anyway sometime when they approve of it. I think that would benefit, that's a win-win all the way around.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How much right of way would you need to put in a line like that?
That is a question I cannot answer.
Because we've negotiated 5-foot right of ways, so we want to do this, we're going right back to the beginning of getting easements. Just,
Well, the easement would be for the storm. Do you have an easement now for that sanitary main?
I would assume that there is some type of easement for that sanitary main, yes.
Matt, is that a sanitary line that you identified?
That's a stormwater line.
No, the blue line, you said, it says.
Yeah, actually, sure about that, sanitation district 1 identified that, yes, sir.
So that, yeah.
I say we move forward with a little bit about what Joe was talking about, but also Mr. Lenz could come back to us once the sanitation district gets you a number and see what the cost differences are.
But because the 50/50 program is a co-permittee program, we would work with the city. We cannot work with private individuals on.
Oh, I thought they were
Public.
getting it for you.
Actually, my attorney reached out to Sanitation District 1, so I'd be more than happy to let the city do their job and work with Sanitation District 1 to get this problem resolved.
So, Joe, I have no problem, we can start to put together an estimate for adding in a storm line during the sidewalk
Right.
phase. But the pipe's still broken, the private pipe's still broken. I don't know what,
Sort of the problem.
that's still gonna be a problem.
Well, if we can put a storm drain in with that project, I don't know what ties into that storm drain other than those catch basins on Chateau. At that point, we're giving you a storm drain there that if you wanted to tie your downspouts into it, go for it. It would eliminate your private property problem.
So at the bottom of the hill where the city filled in all that big culvert right there when they did the condos up on top.
Right.
And they put that storm drain in down there. They tied it into the private line coming down the hill, but it's at least 15, 16 foot deep right through there.
Well, you've got the ditch from Oscar's property down to Belmont, and then on the other side of Belmont, it's an open ditch to that 24-inch pipe going under that fill.
Okay.
I don't know whose responsibility that is under that fill, we're not even gonna go there right now. But my thought, you know how it is when that rain comes down across those driveways.
Oh, yeah.
Across the street,
I
it
dumped
shoots
it in
right
my
over.
yard.
It's
I
up
mean,
to your knees.
Well, no, my point is that that's a lot of the contributing
Yeah.
water in your front yards, is coming from the east side of Dayton Pike. So, and if you were to approve the sidewalk going down there, that water is gonna be this deep by the time it gets down in front of your property, because there's no storm drains on that side.
right up and up there.
I think what we need to do is twofold. Number one, we need to get an estimate of what the 50/50 costs were for the repair of just this specific property for Mr. Lenz. I think it's kicking the can down the road, but I think we need to have that number. We also need to, and it's gonna take a longer time to do it, have SD1 work with the city as far as how much it would cost to do a new storm drain line from Chateau, from those street drains there, all the way down to that outlet right before Belmont.
To be clear, the first project that you spoke of, it would be a private cost share, and that would be, SD1 would contribute a third of the cost, up to $10,000. if we were to repair just the piece of pipe that you were talking about.
Right, if it was just that
Smaller
property,
project.
right?
No, no, since it's a private cost share, I think the city would be exceeding its authority, giving a benefit to one citizen by being the ones to explore that option.
Well, there are a number we can't even explore.
Yeah, but I'm saying the city can't go, if your car breaks down, the city can't go get an estimate for your car for you. You know, otherwise they gotta do it for everybody up and down the road. So you either do it as one whole project for the benefit of the whole community, or if it's a private, if you're gonna treat it as a private cost share project, then unfortunately the responsibility falls on Mr. Wentz because it's not a benefit to the community as a whole.
So what you're saying, Mr. Edge, is for council, and it's council's decision, if they want to proceed in such a fashion, is, Mr. Lenz, you would need to get a private estimate of what that would cost.
Or just his property,
Correct. And then council can decide whether they want to do that or not. And with a 50-50 from SD1.
No,
but no, that's
this
where
would
the
be a third.
thirds.
For a third
Up
of the
to
cost. And we
10,000
have had
from
customers
SD1.
that have, property owners that have collectively gotten together and gotten an estimate and participated in the private cost share. If it's impacting more than just your property.
So what SD1 is saying is if we want to look into, as a city, a new line under the sidewalk, we could apply and possibly do a 50-50 match between the city and SD1 for that project. If we're looking at the private line that's broken, that's causing issues, they have a different program that covers a third by the city, a third by SD1, a third by the property owner.
Yeah, it's two different approaches to this issue.
Correct.
And I understand that, you know, especially if we have monsoon season again this spring, if we go with the full line all the way down in the sidewalks, that's gonna probably be a year or two till it gets done. But otherwise, we're not doing a sidewalk at all.
Well, that's not
No,
true.
that's not true.
That's incorrect.
Then I am misinformed, I apologize. I think we need to explore both options. Number one, how much would the city's cost be for what Mr. Lenz is asking? And number two, what would the cost be to do a new storm line, brand new, under SD1's direction and responsibility moving forward?
Yeah. What we can't do, what I can't do, what we can't do is get the cost to repair his private line.
Who has to get that cost?
He would do it.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I understand. So even though we have all these flooding issues because of this line, the city can't come to the sanitation district and say, we have this issue, we need to give you the right of way on this pipe, and they get,
We don't have right.
we don't have that ability?
Because we don't own it.
City doesn't own it, it's all private.
If it's private, I want to get myself clear on this. If it's private, how is a city allowed to dump water from catch basins on city property into a private line? I just don't understand
And
that.
why are they charging us for water removal if it's private?
I mean, if something is private, you can't, I'm not going to allow you to come dump stuff in my house, and that's, my house is private, so how are we allowing, you've got the catch basins right there, the water's coming off of our streets and it's dumping into a private line? I don't understand that.
Well, I think you have to think big picture on that. I mean, because when they installed the catch basins, for example, they were part of a newer development. I mean, they couldn't just install them and have it go.
Okay, I'll agree with that. Then, so why didn't they take those catch basins and tie them somewhere else and say, we're not going to want to go on that private property?
I'm gonna guess it was a developer that put the catch basins in and then turned them over to the city. So the developer took the, the most.
Well, who gave you the permit to tie it in?
What, about 70 years ago?
I don't know how long it's been.
Well, again, I don't.
I mean, I'm talking about the new catch base they just put in, they ain't been there that long. So who gave permission to tie them into a private line if they tied them into the private line?
Again, it's before regulations. I mean, the regulations didn't come into play until the early 2000s. So,
Well,
I mean, like, when we
them
have-
catch bases only been in probably maybe 6 years, if that.
They put them in, I believe, when they were working on that water problem come down Chateau Ridge, when they did that wall by Crittenden's house, and then put them catch basins in, so whenever that was done.
Yeah, that ain't been that long ago.
tied in, which might have been, like you said, 5, 6 years ago.
Now, is ST1 that did that?
Huh?
ST1 did that?
I don't have a clue who did that. I'm sure we got records somewhere on that.
Right.
So which catch basin, because
On the second page.
I'm confused. And are we sure they're connected to this private line?
No,
100%.
without the program, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I apologize, I should have been more prepared for tonight. I was home with the flu for 2 days, so I apologize.
I guess I'll ask this question. If those catch basins are not tied in, where's all that water coming from in that private line? That's a 2-foot line.
Well, it's also coming from, that line continues past Chateau up the hill.
Goes all the way up.
So it's coming from private lines up the hill, under the road as well, not just through the catch basins. And the water is also coming from the hillsides and other driveways across the street. So the flooding, it's bad in that area because most homes are down at the bottom of this valley, and they're getting it from all fronts. They're getting it from the hillside, they're getting it from the street, and they're obviously getting it from this line that's broken, so there's obviously water backing up. So one of the benefits to the sidewalk system that's going in is our ability to put in curbs to prevent some of that storm water from coming across the street into the front yards.
Okay,
That's
like
not
you
going to
said-
solve the whole problem, but.
Like you said, all the water comes off the hill, so when you put a sidewalk across my property, and all that water eventually washes it away, who's responsible for putting that sidewalk back? Me?
No, what I'm saying is it'll prevent the.
It ain't gonna prevent nothing, have you seen the water in my yard? It ain't gonna prevent that water from washing that sidewalk.
No, I'm not saying it's gonna solve the problem, but I think it'll help solve the problem.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, who's gonna have to replace that sidewalk when it comes time to replace it, when it disappears? Me?
I don't think it'll disappear.
But when it does, who's gonna be responsible for putting the sidewalk back?
I don't think it'll disappear, so the
Well,
sidewalk becomes part of the,
Well, when it starts breaking up and disappearing instead of replacing, I'm gonna load it up and I'll haul it off. I mean, because I'm not gonna pay to put it back. If I'm gonna be responsible for it, I'm not paying to put it back in there, because I don't want the damn thing to begin with.
Ben,
And if all that water comes down and washes it out, then that's not my
The
problem.
water's literally up to your knees. I've been in it.
I understand.
seen it.
I understand.
Do you
So-
think we need to create a committee to do a little more research on this to see, especially of those catch basins that were put in 60 years ago, where do they go to? Are they into the private? Who
We
got
can find
permission to do
that information, it's just on a program, that we don't have.
We would definitely need more information, in my opinion, and that's, again, it's council's.
I don't think
Council
anybody
President.
on this council is saying we shouldn't get this fixed, but we also have to make sure we're doing things legally.
Right.
But I imagine a few of this council, this is probably the first they've heard of this, the first they've seen diagrams of this, and we all agree that this is a problem.
Big problem.
But we agree, but we don't have enough information for council to make a coherent decision.
Right.
So what I would ask you, Mr. Lenz, to do would be is to do your due diligence as far as finding out what is that cost for that private line, and then we can work with ST1, where it's 1/3 or whatever. We would also like to take a look at what it would be for a 50/50 new line towards the sidewalk. We need to take these types of decisions into consideration before the council can make a decision.
I agree, and the reason I brought this to your attention, I wanted the city to consider the repair or replacement of that pipe, because Michael keeps saying it's private, and it's pretty convenient to say something's private when you can make someone else pay for something. And I can tell you, I've been a lifelong resident in Dayton, we pay pretty high taxes, every one of us do. And we should get something for our taxes. That ain't my problem, that's the city's problem. And I pay taxes on a regular basis like everybody else does, and we need to take ownership of the problem. The other thing I would mention is Nelson Stark's developing all that property on the river. You probably have a pretty good working relationship with them. That'll be a prime company to talk to say, hey, what can you do for us here? And I'm not saying anything for free, I'm saying maybe they can give you an estimate to do that so that you can have your 50/50 price, because that's what they do.
We're not gonna get into those type of discussions, but I understand where you're coming from. But I think you do definitely have some compassion from this council, from this administration on your issue. I think you probably also have some compassion with us on the Safer School routes that we're actively working towards. Adding close and safe routes for kids to get to schools.
I think that's a great idea, and maybe they might need life jackets too if you don't fix it right. I'm telling you, look at the video, it's not.
I've been there.
It's like a damn stream going through there.
I've been up there during the monsoons.
So you can have some life jackets on the side of the sidewalk, because you're gonna have to get it fixed.
But again, I'm gonna ask that we get better data, bring it back to council, and then they can make a decision on where we move forward.
I think that's fair.
So that's my ask of you, sir, and Ms. Redley, and I respect both of you guys as neighbors and citizens, to do your due diligence, bring it back to council, let them make an educated decision.
I would expect that, and I think it'd be a big waste of money to put that sidewalk through there and then tear it up when you're.
Oh, you're right, and to Ms. Redley's concerns, I don't want to put a sidewalk in there that he's going to have to pay for in 5 years when that thing washes away.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
I
I'm
see
not against the
everyone's
sidewalk. I mean,
piece.
I really don't want it in my yard, but I'm not against it for safety reasons. But like he said, I don't want to put it in there. If you got to come in and put a drain line in there and tear it back up to fix it, or if all that water, it's eventually going to break it up. I work around concrete all the time. I know shit washes away. And that water will wash that sidewalk out, I promise you.
I respect your knowledge of the situation because I know what you do. And I hope that you respect the
I understand, yes.
decision of the council to
I respect
get
it.
more information. And hopefully, I think 30 days next month, would that be considerable?
I think that would be enough time.
To come back with some information. Michael, I don't know if we can put together an estimate for within 30 days. So then the council could have an educated decision that they can make a decision on.
Well, I think, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, how long is it going to take? Because I'm sure if we look at option 2, which is a completely new line, that's going to take longer than 30 days to get an estimate for the costs on that, I would presume.
Well, the first steps with us would be to begin work with Sean on an application for the 50/50 program.
Well, let's set that to the side. I think right now, let me rephrase your question, Councilmember, if I may. Could you get a rough estimate? It doesn't have to be to the penny yet. I'm not saying let's bid it out and get exact prices, but let's rough it out.
Well, he's going to come back in a month and say it's going to be X amount of money, and we're going to say, well, okay, well, we still have to consider option 2. We need to
Well,
look
no,
at
that's
both
what,
options.
that's what I'm saying is Michael can get you option 2 in a month, but it's not gonna be exact to the penny, it's just gonna be rough.
Nothing is, actually.
No, if it's like 10% off, higher or lower, that's fine, right?
So,
But I don't think it's prudent to ask council to make a decision on a motion at this point.
I asked them to consider doing this, because I think Michael
I
drew a
think
hard
you got
line in
that.
the sand, saying that there's a private pipe, and we all know it's not a private pipe, everyone's smarter than that.
Well,
I think you have
I
consideration
do
of the
sympathize
council.
with you, and I've told you all along, if I could fix your problem, I would, because it technically is a private line, legally it can't unless I'm told to do otherwise. So believe me, I have all the sympathy in the world for you all. I know it's a problem up there. We have a group that's meeting tomorrow to discuss these stormwater problems in Dayton. Dayton Pike is at the top of the list, so I do sympathize with you, but you gotta understand, I have to look at this black and white. Because it's listed as a private line, I just can't have a free-for-all and go get you quotes and get this thing fixed. I don't have the authority to do that. So please understand,
I understand.
I do sympathize with your situation, both of you.
Mr. Williams, with all due consideration, I believe that the fact that the council's given us 45 minutes of discussion, they certainly have compassion towards your cause. So if we
I
could.
understand that, and I brought this to Michael's attention probably in the spring when the houses were being flooded. So I apologize for him not communicating with council about a problem that the city has.
I've communicated with them. I've told you of the programs all along since the first time you came. So look, I'm sorry it's listed as a private line. I couldn't do more for you. I do sympathize with your situation. But don't make me out to be the bad guy here.
I'm just stating the facts, okay? I'm just stating the facts. It's a private line, and I don't want to fill it up with concrete, but I'd rather do the right thing. And I appreciate Mr. Baker's efforts and council's efforts for listening to everything.
Thank you very much, sir. So for next steps, I believe We'll see you again in a month. You'll have your estimates for a private fix of that line. We'll do our best efforts to have with SD1 option number 2, and then you can present that case.
That sounds fair, thank you.
Ms. Redleaf?
Out there?
All right, so
I'm trying to ask you a question. Ma'am, what is your role with SD1?
I'm the community liaison. I work directly with Adam Cheney, our executive director.
Okay. I appreciate the work that SD1 has done on Urban Terrace so far. And this council appointed a stormwater task force last year, and we've already addressed some of the major problems. This is an absolutely bigger major problem, at a bigger expense probably. But don't think that these things are being ignored. And last year was quite the anomaly if you look at the rain charts. I'm not saying that it's not a problem, I'm saying it really exacerbated the problem. And I look forward to the discussions tomorrow in the conference tomorrow on the stormwater.
Okay.
So certainly
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time.
Absolutely, we want to be good partners and work together, so anything you need from me, don't hesitate to ask. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Coker. Thank you for bringing this to the council. Appreciate it. That was the first member of the audience participation. So we have anybody else like to address council with their concerns? Going once, going twice, closed. Moving along to the mayor's report. First of all, I'd like to wish everybody a very happy 2020. Glad to have everybody around still. I want to give a major thanks out to our employees of the city who worked tirelessly through the holidays. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, Hanukkah, everything they celebrated, they were there. I know our fire department responded to a major issue on Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve night, Christmas morning, yes, sir.
So our thoughts are certainly with the family that was affected by that, and also with the health and safety of your department. Thank you for doing so. The police department has been on call 24/7, and Public Works has made sure that no one is sliding on any ice that we've had. So big thanks for them. Another thing in the mayor's report I'd like to address would be Transportation Authority of Northern Kentucky has recently addressed some changes that they're looking at making to Route 12. The city has made our recommendations that we have given to their authority. Again, it's a recommendation that the city can give. We can only make recommendations. Whether they follow them or not is up to them. But that would be to make sure that the line remains the same, the hours remain the same, the buses are available to anybody with disabilities, and also comfortable, as well as accessible. So we've made those recommendations. If you have any concerns to those changes of the route, you can go to the fiscal county meetings and also send an email to info@tinkbus.org. So public transportation is a big portion of our city, and if that's your concern, please make it known. And that is all I have for the mayor's report today. I'd like to now make a motion for approval of the minutes for the December 3rd council meeting.
So moved.
Member Neary's made the motion.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lynn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. I don't believe we have any ordinances or orders to approve today. Nice and light. We'll move along to the city administrator's report. Mr. Gibbon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick update on the comprehensive plan. The Planning and Zoning Board completed the review of the document in December. They meet again tomorrow. I'm in the process of finalizing kind of the summary from the November and December meetings. So once I complete that, likely sometime tomorrow, I'm going to forward on to the entire council for review. But I'd like to get together with the 3 council members that weren't kind of part of the process, Councilman Cornett, Lynn, and Mr. Burns. Look to schedule a meeting at your all's convenience. I'll shoot an email out and we can get together and review it, and then I'd like to bring that to council in February. And then, as I mentioned, planning and zoning meeting tomorrow, 7 o'clock. in this building. That's all I have, Mayor.
March, 7 o'clock. Thank you very much, Mr. Gibbon. Now I turn over the floor to Mr. Tom Edge for the city attorney's report.
Nothing to report.
Thank you, sir. Department heads report. Start off with the fire department, given your hard work this season.
Thanks, sir. You guys have my report. A couple things just to touch on. Our fire runs and our EMS runs were up both this year, so we're up over 200 runs from this time last year. And I anticipate that will continue to go with the growth of the city. Within the next year, we'll have 444 apartments occupied between both cities, so with the extra people coming in, we anticipate runs will go up. I do want to touch on our Christmas program we did this year. Every year we get 10 families from the schools, and this year we were able to give Christmas to 32 kids, 20 of them which got brand new bikes and helmets. So, and Santa Claus was able to go with us on the fire truck again this year to go out and give that stuff, so that was pretty cool. Had our fire board meeting in December. We were looking into a new ambulance. The one we have, for lack of better words, is running the wheels off of it. And so we need to purchase that within the next, probably make a purchase in the next 6 to 8 months, if not sooner. Just putting that on your radar. So I saw some of you may have seen the posting. We are going to be looking for a new employee. I do have a member leaving at the end of the month, going to Memphis Fire Department. So I'll be looking to replace him. So I'm hoping to get a good number of candidates so we can try to find the best person to help serve the city. Beyond that, I don't have a whole lot more to add. So, like the mayor said, we did have a pretty decent fire Christmas Eve night, unfortunately for the family, but everybody was healthy and safe, and we'll move on from it.
The member that's leaving your department,
Yes.
his name?
Colton Lang.
Colton.
So he's 22, got his whole life ahead of him, and Memphis is the 10th largest department in the country, 58 stations. He's got, I told him, I said, I don't blame him a bit. So he's going to take a pretty significant pay raise to go down there. And so I can't blame him. So,
Thank him for his service to our city.
absolutely.
We do appreciate it.
I hate to see him go.
Any questions for Mr. Atkins?
Next fire board meeting, sir?
It's in February, so I guess the third Wednesday of the month.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you all.
Chief Halfhill for the police department.
I didn't have anything to add. You have my reports for December and then end of the year. I talked to Bill, if you guys want 2018 end of the year results to compare with 2019, I can get them to you. I think that was it. And then we also are advertising for just to establish a list. We're not losing anybody or anything like that, just in case we do. It's a lengthy process to get new recruits into the academy. So we started that just to establish a list, which is going to be good for 2 years. So we're not losing anybody. We're just covering our bases. So that's all I have.
I'd just like to make one comment, and I talked to Dave before the meeting about one of the things I looked on this year report was warrants issued. The total this year was 169. He said it was down significantly. In my comment, some people may think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing, Dave. I think your police department is excellent. You're doing an excellent job. And the fact that it's down, I think the word's out that we're not putting up with the shenanigans that we did in the past. So I congratulate you and your staff on a great job.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for the chief of police comments? Thank you very much, Chief. Mr. Yoder?
Yes, sir.
The floor is yours for economic development report, sir.
All right. So new businesses this month, Galactic Fried Chicken, I think it's the first time I've said the name, will be opening up on 626th Avenue. That's the old Dayton Chili, Christopher Feld's spot. And we're working right now on finalizing a rental abatement agreement with them as their CCAP application. They'll be doing chicken tenders, coleslaw, sides, You get sandwiches, wraps. Galactic Fried Chicken is being opened by Shane Coffey, a Dayton resident who's had several food trucks here. Some people noticed his Galactic Fried Chicken food truck, said Dayton, Kentucky on it, and I've known Shane for about 2.5 years now, since he was one of the participants when we did the Food Truck Thursday. Good guy, great to work with. He's going to be a great addition to our business district. So he's got a couple inspections to go through. Seems like everything's in line, and I'll let you guys know when we can do a ribbon cutting and eat some chicken tenders. All right? On events, I want to thank the Main Street Board we provided the hot chocolate and cookies for the Light Up Dayton event. And a special thanks to Aaron Fox, who donated some of the most amazing sugar cookies you'd ever eat. And they were astonishing. The icings were like mango flavored, stuff like that. I mean, she spent several $100s on these cookies and just donated them to the community. And for those of us who were there and saw them and ate a couple.
It was beautiful, too.
It was beautiful. Some of the most amazing cookies you ever saw, and the kids really liked them. And also to Tim and Crystal at Hometown Heroes for letting us to use their kitchen to heat up, to make the hot chocolate. So it was a good time was had by all, and it was really good that the board, we all got together and give back to the community. We had a grants update. Last month after a meeting, we submitted a grant in conjunction with Greenworks Ohio River Valley, to what Amazon's putting up, to address invasive species and stream restoration in Sargent Park. Since then, we're submitting the grant. There's been a conversation with the grantees questioning about stuff, so that's a good thing. I'm not saying anything beyond that, other than it's always good when they want to know more. So hoping on that. Our right-of-way process is progressing on the Dayton Pike grant. We talked about that some tonight. And the Main Street Board did not meet in December because that would have been Christmas. But we'll be meeting on January 28th. Board of Architectural Review. We had our holiday decorating contest, and that went well. It was a lot of fun. We want to make holiday buzz around here. And we also had a meeting last month where we talked about the concrete molding and tops of 501 through 507 6th Ave with the contractor, and came up with a pretty good plan for them to address it. So that'll be addressing there as we move forward. And we're planning on having a Board of Architecture Review meeting next Tuesday, January 14th, at 7 p.m. at Hometown Heroes. Right now, there's nothing formally on the agenda, but there's a couple projects that I expect to get on the agenda by then. One, 304 6th Avenue, there's construction going on there, for a new business going in there. And, I think we'll be submitting some plans to run for the Board of Architectural Review. So that's the summary of what's happened in the month of December. Any questions from council? No? Thank you and happy.
You knew it.
I tried, I tried.
Don't run away. The Sargent Park project submitted a grant. I'm not seeing any plans in a couple of years as far as what's going on. I live there. I'm down there clearing stuff out myself. What exactly is can all of council get the details on what the plans are and what the grant has been submitted for?
I'm going to copies of this grant. This grant is really to address ash trees and invasive removals of species like that. Yeah, I'll get you a copy of the grant. So that will take care of the foundation of the hillside, planting new stuff. I'll get you a copy of the grant. How's that sound?
I think all of council should have that because
that's fine. No worries.
The invasive species up there, there's nothing else but.
Yeah, you would have to be replanting and,
right.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And last but,
Last but not least,
thank you, yeah.
Mayor,
Two hours,
council.
please.
Do I have a copy of my report, just a brief summary for the month of December. There were
43 letters sent out with 16 were citations, 3 were grass invoices, and 24 were violations. Of those 6 citations, 3 of those were issued at the end of the month with the help of the mayor on the new ordinance, the 9410 unsolicited written materials ordinance. 3 of those citations were issued to Belassus. So that went out on the 30th, one for $250, one for $500, and one for $1,000 for 3 separate incidents. So that has been put into motion. They received their certified mail probably in the beginning of November, making them aware. They received a copy of the ordinance as well as a copy of the fine schedule. So when I did this, it wasn't like it would be a surprise to them once they receive it. There were 15 cases that were closed in the month of December. I issued 17 parking tags, towed 5 vehicles. Just a brief synopsis for the fourth quarter. There were 101 total violations, 39 citations, and 3 grass invoices were issued in the fourth quarter. And 66 cases were closed in the fourth quarter. That's all I have. I'll have kind of a comparison for 2018 and 2019 at the next meeting. Any questions? Concerns?
I know it's kind of quiet these times of year, so we appreciate you continuing to push forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Do we have any petitions? Do we have any unfinished business? Council? Any new business? Council?
I would just like to thank Jessica Lovins for Light Up Dayton. I wasn't able to attend this year, but maybe the mayor of Whoville can tell us how it was.
Yeah, I got to dress up this year as the mayor of Whoville. It was fun. Once again, thanks to all of our city departments. Santa came in on Dayton W Fire Department's sleigh. We saw hundreds of children, gave them all gifts. It was an amazing event, and the Dayton Civic Club, led by Ms. Lovins, is certainly a well-run organization, and the city's in her debt for that. So we appreciate their work.
If you haven't stopped down when she has these events, you really need to just stop by, even if you don't have kids, because she is amazing at what she does for decorating and getting things organized. She's really good at it.
That's really cool. It's top notch. I've never seen anything like it anywhere else. So and it's all volunteers. So we appreciate the Civic Club on that. Any other new business throughout the City Council?
Sir, I do.
Mr. Geary.
There was a recommendation made, I believe, in last month's meeting by Ms. Gordon about the audience participation placement in the agenda. I would recommend swapping the department head's report with the audience. So often we get into a long conversation and, for example, the fire chief has to sit here for an hour and a half until it's his time to report. Maybe we can consider, maybe you would consider, since you make the agenda, letting the department head reports go first.
Joe, I think you know me, and I think council knows me. I'm a pretty democratic type of person. If the agenda is following the ones of years past, I had put no thought into having them before, and I know Mr. Atkins really enjoys all of the shenanigans that we get to have. So if the council is so
involved in this conversation.
I just know how much you like our time.
I love your time, sir.
Here, sir.
Just a suggestion,
Again, it's a democratic choice. If you'd like to make the motion, if council would like to approve that, we'll make it so.
It's your decision, sir, you make the agenda, I was just making a suggestion.
So you're not making a motion?
No, sir.
All right, thank you very much for your talk.
I was addressing a citizen's concern and making a suggestion.
Oh, I understand, I appreciate that. Do we have any other new business? Or would anybody else like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
All right. Mr. Burns has made the motion.
To what?
Specific. Phil, could you please make a specific motion?
Make a motion that we change the plan from audience participation at the first of the meeting to the last of the meeting?
The audience, Mr. Burns has made the motion that we
It used
move.
to be called Council Burns, now I get called Mr. Burns, but so.
Councilman Burns has made the motion that we move audience participation from the beginning to the end. Do we have a second?
I would like to, I thought Mr. Neary was talking about having them go,
Do you have a second?
no.
Does anybody have a second? I'm gonna give it 5, 4, 3, 2, and I'm sorry, Mr. Burns, second.
The
Now,
last time I made a motion, doesn't make no difference to me.
So, to clarify, I'll make the motion now, sir, since it was my idea. I would like to make the motion versus the current agenda, to have the department heads report before the mayor's report, and the audience report after the city attorney's report.
so you were making a motion to put the department head's report before the mayor's report, and the audience portion after the department head's report.
After the city attorney's report, after all of the city employees have made their statements and reports and everything.
That is your motion, sir. Do we have a second?
What's this? No second.
8 seconds? 5.
I'll second it.
Oh, second. It is now up for a vote or discussion. Do we have a discussion about
Yeah,
that?
I have a discussion. What's the difference in your motion, Joe, and my motion?
Well, you said to make the audience last, though. I just wanted to correct that. No, we used to have.
Whatever.
Discussion portion is closed. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
No.
Wait, can we get a roll call on that, Don?
Yes. Member Neary?
Aye.
Member Baszler?
Aye.
Member Cornett?
No.
Member Burns?
I mean, I don't see no difference in my motion and your motion. Come on. It's ridiculous. This is aye.
Oh, the ayes have it.
Member Lynn?
The ayes have it. We will now move whatever Joe said.
Mayor, I have a question for you and Michael and Rick.
Yes, sir.
Somebody made the decisions to move the trucks off 4th Street and move them behind the flood wall.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me how's that's remedied the solution?
What solution?
The trucks are going down 4th Street and putting mud and dirt on 4th Street.
Not anymore there, sir.
Where are they going to now? So will we fix the problem, or we just kicked it down the road? Because it's gonna cause problems down on the roadway behind the flood wall.
Correct.
Here's a novel idea. I like to come up with novel ideas. We have 2 multi-million-dollar companies down there that are using our streets, and why don't we ask them, or go in negotiations with them, that they would clean our streets once a month, and the city would, at an expense to the city, put up signs that says, on the 3rd Thursday of every month, the streets will be clean.
I'll think. Bill, so we spoke with Mr. Starks' company. We spoke with multiple different trucking companies on how these situations happen. It's not to the point where it needs to be done every month. It may need to be done, I'm just gonna make up numbers here, twice in March and 0 in April. It depends on the weather of the months that we're experiencing. So anything it wouldn't make sense to do it like that, because you might get really beat up in one month and not so much in the other. We asked the company to please take the Riverside option because it was affecting less people versus going down 4th Street and the Avenue. Considerably less people and less cars that would be dirtied up by their trucks. Now, they've also agreed to clean those streets when we request them with water trucks. Now, unfortunately, we can't use water trucks during certain times of the year due to freezing. So that's the decision that city administration worked alongside the construction companies here.
So you're telling me they're gonna do it at their expense when they want to?
No.
Or at our, our request?
We worked pretty diligently and hard with the construction companies on this, to make sure that the least amount of people are impacted and the least amount of city money is used.
It's still not solving the problem.
Well, we can't solve the problem.
Yeah, you can by telling them companies,
The
look,
streets
I
are gonna
told
get dirty
you,
one way or the other. It's a matter of, if we do it on a schedule, they can clean them up and get dirty the next day. If we do them as needed, when the streets are starting to get dirty, we can clean them up.
At our discretion.
The streets are gonna get dirty, whether it's 4th Avenue, 6th Avenue, Manhattan Boulevard. When you have trucks coming into town in inclement weather, it's gonna happen. We're trying to stay on
what
top
does
of
it cost for them to clean the streets?
I don't know.
I think there was a statement a couple, 2-3 months, maybe 6 months ago, that would cost $3,000 for them to clean the streets. Is that pretty close?
I have no idea.
Once again, that man sitting back there sends out 50 letters a month charging our citizens from something so minimal as having a house sign, and we can't get a multi-million-dollar company to clean our streets. Once again, that's ludicrous.
But, Bill, we are, and we don't send him a letter, we just ask him and he does.
You take the phone calls that I took then.
We have,
You take the phone calls about over Terrace too.
we have.
We have, sir.
You okay? Make a motion, we adjourn.
That's not where we're at, that, sir. Any other new business? Again?
Yeah. They make that motion and everything.
Oh, good. Mr. Burns made the motion, I apologize.
Yeah.
Councilman Burns, I apologize.
A motion to adjourn is always in order.
Motion to adjourn.
Wish I'd known that earlier.
Motion by Councilman.
that motion.
Second by Council Lady Cornett. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.